Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is Hairymuppet. Welcome back to another Factorio Space Age tutorial. Now, this morning we're going to be getting into space platforms and rockets, but we're going to be concentrating mainly on rockets for this this third tutorial. Basically, I was going to do all of them, both of them in the sort of the same episode, but I decided I'm going to split them up, and we're going to talk about the intricacies of space platforms in a separate episode. And this one is all just going to be about interplanetary logistics. So how items get sent up to a rocket, how items get sent back down from a rocket to a planet, and so on and so forth. So there's two very important buildings that you need to know about on the planet's surface. The first is the rocket silo, and the second is the cargo landing pad. So let's talk about the rocket silo first. So this is your basic building, and it sends items up to space platforms. It also creates a new space platform by sending up one of these guys, the space platform starter pack, which basically just, if I go over to my OG, it basically just pops this little guy on a little platform in the middle, and then from there on, it's got an inventory. You can send a whole bunch of stuff up to it, and that's pretty much it. So the way the rocket silos work is, you need to build a rocket, you need 50 rocket parts. Each rocket part takes one processing unit, one low density structure, and one rocket fuel. So yes, at the very start of the game, you will need 50 of each of those resources to build a full rocket. So getting prod modules stuck into these buildings is extremely useful, because yes, you definitely do not like these. Before you get off now, these are very, very expensive components. So prod module, the rocket silos up ASAP. Later on, there will be rocket part productivity research. You need to go all the way out to Aquila to get these cryogenic science packs. But once you do, you can start doing this infinite research, and it'll give you a plus 10% productivity on your rocket silos. So I got mine at level 20 at the moment, which means if you look over the right hand side, it's got a productivity of plus 240%. 40% of that is of course coming from the 4 prod modules. So, now what do you use the rocket silos for? Well, the rocket silos have a few kind of main things they can do. So they can work in very manual ways, and they can work in very automatic ways. So let's talk about the manual ways first. So right now, for example, I can chuck some belts in here, and you can see the rocket inventory has a limit of 50, because if you look at the turbo transport belt, you can see that even though it has a stack size of 100, the rocket capacity is 50, which is half a stack. So it's not very efficient to send these belts up via a rocket, because yeah, it's just the way it works. Some items have the rocket capacity is way higher than the stack size. Some items it's way lower. Some items it's the same. It changes for very different items. And we'll get back into what items you should be sending via rockets in a little while, but let's talk about the capabilities. So I manually put some turbo transport belts in there. I can now select deliver cargo and send that up to any of the ships that are currently orbiting the current planet. So, and you can do this on any planet. So I'm going to send them off to personal, and as you can see, the rocket's heating up, it's getting ready to go, and there it goes. It's going to launch those 50 turbo belts up to Nalvis, up to my personal ship. And as you can see, you can cache up to 2 rockets. So the second rocket we had cached is going up, and that's 100%. Beautiful. And now in the background, it's building up the second rocket, And as you can see, this purple bar is going crazy because we've got 240% productivity. Now, the build new space platform is basically you need a space platform starter pack to do that. We could, let's actually do that. Why not? So we'll request one of these, and I do have them in the logistics system. Not many in the logistics system, but I got enough. So that we could just pop this down and select to build a new space platform. Just wait for the robots. It would be one of the things I'd like in this game is if you hover over something that's yellow, it sort of gives you an estimation of how long it's going to take for that item to get to you. Alright. Chuck that in there. Now we can deliver it as cargo, or you can build a new space platform, and it automatically takes us into the map view where you can say, okay, so I'm going to call this OG small. We might end up using this next episode, so yeah. I'll just call it small. And as you can see, it is now in the process of building a new space platform called small. And as you can see, it's building it around Now V. So this planet icon, very important for telling you where the new space platform is. So we don't really need to mess around with this too much. We'll mess around with it more in the next episode. But there we go. We can see that the space platform got sent up, and we click on it. It is now empty. We might actually use this for a bit of logistics now. But let's go back here. Whoa, what happened? Oh, I see. Okay. So it didn't actually use this rocket to build the space platform. It used one of my other rockets, which are automatically pulling stuff out of the logistics network. And of course, there are space platform packs in the logistics network. So, yes. But if you didn't have any other rocket silos set up, you just had this one, then it would, of course, use this rocket. Now, of course, you can also travel to space platforms. And you can only do that when your inventory is empty. So I got to get rid of all of this crap. So I have a couple of these rockets lying around that I use purely for transport, and they've all got active providers sitting right next to them. And I just turn off my personal logistics, and I'll probably have to get rid of this ammo as well. And now my inventory is empty, and as you can see, travel to space platform has been selected, so I can go up to small, and yeah. Now, the only reason you actually want to go up to a space platform is to travel to different planets. You do not need to be up there for construction purposes, you do not need to be up there for logistics purposes. It's purely for traveling between planets. And of course, obviously, you're not allowed to transport items in your inventory between different planets. You can transport weapons, but you will need to pick up ammo. Don't ask me why I have legendary rocket launchers in my weapon slots. Yeah. As you can see, now we're up here, we're in there. There's not much we can do in the ship. So we're just going to drop back down to Nevis. You can drop down to any planet, but if I drop down to Volcanus, it'll just sit there pending until the ship is over Volcanus. And this ship doesn't have any engines, so it can't actually move anywhere. So we're just going to drop back down to Nevis. Now, in terms of the logistics for these, for this interplanetary sort of thing, basically, just think of the rocket, the hub. If we go down to the hub, we can see that it's... No, that's the wrong one. This one. Think of it as a combination between a requester chest and a passive provider chest. It does have active provider functionality, but only manually. Which means it's really not an active provider chest, but you can manually click on items in the middle and they'll just sort of get thrown down to whatever planet. So for example, in this particular ship, Those 50 belts that I sent up here before, we can shift click them and they basically just get dropped off the ship and then sent down to the planet. So that's a manual action. And very early in the game, it's very useful to be able to just send tons of stuff off and just drop it off the side of the ship down to whatever planet you happen to be on, especially if it's a brand new planet and you got no supplies. You can have a ship that transports you there, and the ship can also have a bunch of stuff in its inventory, and you can just drop it off the side of the ship and then use it to build your new base. So that's all manual. So we can send items manually up to the ship, and we can also send items down manually from the ship. Now let's talk about automating it for a little bit. I will start by looking at the rocket silo and this particular check mark. So basically, this turns the rocket silo into a mechanism for fulfilling the requests of space platforms. So it basically turns the rocket silo into a combination of passive provider and active and requester chest. So it's a passive provider because it provides items to the space platform, but it's a requester because it requests items from the local planetary logistics network. And so robots will fly in and automatically drop items off into the rocket inventory, which it'll then send up to the space platform. So we're gonna go over to my main rocket base up here. And as you can see, all of these guys have automatic requests from space platforms turned on. And they're just sending up mainly space platforms at the moment, not much else. I don't think there's much interesting going on. There's a massive amount of space platforms that I'm currently using because I'm currently building a whole bunch of Promethean rockets. We can see here, for example, it's requesting 50, it's got 26. So a couple more bots just arrived and filled up 50, and now that it's got 50, it is going to be launching. And it launches up to some space platform in the in orbit over Nalvis, which requires space platforms. So yes, you will need a lot of space platforms for all of the ships that you are building. So that is automatic requests from space platforms. And the reason I have so many rockets is because, first of all, the animation to launch something is quite slow. And second of all, you do have to take into account the amount of time it takes to rebuild the rocket. Now these guys have one speed module each. Some of them have 2 speed modules. This one has 2, I think. And even with all that prod bonus, you can see it still takes a little while to actually rebuild the rocket. Now I'm going to get out of here because it's quite a bit noisy. But that's basically my automated system for taking everything out of the local logistics network and sending it up to rockets. Now in terms of automatic rockets sending stuff up to space platforms, there's basically 2 situations in which that happens. So if we go over to small, we can see that you can either do requests like normal in here, and let's just say I want medium electric poles, and I can set it to 10, or I can set it to 50. Now the thing is, the medium electric pole has a rocket capacity of 50, and the game is smart, so it'll always send the minimum. It'll send the rocket stack. It won't send half the amount that a rocket capsule can send. It'll always send 50, unless you start messing with this custom minimum payload. So for example, let's just set it to 10 at the moment, and you can see that on the way is 50. So there will be some rocket which will automatically request. We might even be able to catch a glimpse of it as it's sending off. There we go. So there's our one with 50 medium electric poles. Now, unlike space exploration, if you've ever played that, it is not immediate. The round trip time for those cargo rockets is kind of well, it's not real time because obviously it takes ages, but as you can see, it does take some amount of time. So there we go. It just landed and it just sent 10 over there. Now, if we wanted, say, big electric poles, let's say we only want 10 and we set the custom minimum payload to 10. I think it will still set us 50. No, it actually sends us 10. Okay. So there we go. That is how you get less than you actually need. And that's less than, obviously, this rocket capacity of 50. So now, I mainly use that when I'm sending up really crazy things like legendary prod modules or something like that, where I just don't have that many in the logistics network, and I only want like 5 of them, but, you know, I don't want to wait for 50 to be built before I send up the 5 I need, so I do a custom minimum threshold of 5. Now, that is the main way that you send up items, and we can see now, if I shift click this and send it down, it's going to send another 50 up. So we just dropped it off the edge and automatically another 50 are sent on the way because now we have a request which is no longer fulfilled. Now, the other way that you get items is through construction. So for example, we're going to get a substation. No, substation is too big. We're going to get a single bulk inserter, and I'm going to put it here. And as you can see, it automatically becomes a ghost image, and one bulk inserter has been requested for construction. Now, as you can see, 50 are on the way. So when it does construction, it always sends the maximum rocket capacity because it assumes that you're going to need more of them, and it's trying to be efficient. Now, if you are constructing something that you want only 5, you want to build 5 of something and you only got 5 on the planet, then you basically, what you do is you just say, okay, I want 5 of these, custom minimum payload 5, and then once they're on the ship, it'll say, oh, wait, I need those for construction, and it'll do the construction. So as you can see, that is done. So that's the main bit of logistics, is these 2 different things. Now, when it comes to send something up, you may have noticed, for example, if I select fast inserters, you can see we've got our import from, and this is basically Nowvis. You can select any one of the planets here. You can also select the shattered planet and the solar system edge, which is pointless because these guys do not have planets, so it's impossible to get items sent up from a planet because there is no planet. Now, by default, whenever you select a good, it'll select the default planet which is kind of intended to make it there. For example, the stack inserters take carbon fiber, which is made on Gleba, so it's kind of a Gleba resource. If we go over to the foundry, it changes to Volcanus. If we go over to the fusion power cells, it's changed to Aquilo. So, you can manually change these. For example, I have a system where I send fusion power cells from Aquilo over to Nowvis, and then I provide them to ships over Nowvis. So if I actually do this, they will actually get sent up. Even though they're made on Aquilo, I transport them back over to Nowvis, and then they're provided to certain ships, which it makes more sense to get the fusion power cells from Nowvis than it does to send them all the way over to Aquilo. Especially my space science platforms, which don't move, and they're fusion powered. So yeah, they sit over Nowvis so they can drop the science straight down, but they need fusion power, so I have to go get the fusion power from Nowvis. Now, in terms of Interplanetary, well, we're going to talk about this a little bit later. So we've talked about all the different ways that you get items up to the platform. So now we're going to talk about the different ways that you get things down from the platform. So when you think about it, and this is kind of like it's a requester in terms of these, but it's also a passive provider. So all of these are automatically passive provided to the ship, to the planet downstream. And of course, the way we do that is with the cargo landing pad. Now, as you can see, we've got a whole bunch of requests over here. Some of them have been manually set. Some of them are controlled by the circuit network. What I have is a very, very cool little setup over here. So these are basically all of the different things that I want on this planet, all grouped into groups. And I'll talk about logistics groups in just a second because they are awesome. But these are basically the items that I want on the planet. And then what I do is I take the contents of the logistics network, read logistics contents, and I take what the inputs that I want, which is the red signals, I subtract the green ones, and then whatever the result is, I basically send over, and you can set the requests on this guy and to automatically request basically stuff. So whatever it's missing will automatically be requested. And any ship that is in orbit that has that stuff in it will send it down. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So we have a look at one of our ships that should be dropping stuff down. The calcite ships should be dropping stuff down a little bit. There we go. So that one, as you can see, it's constantly sending calcite off from all of the different cargo bays. Because, of course, we are using calcite, we're sending it off to a belt. And because we're constantly sending it off to a belt, the cargo bay is on the cargo bay on the ground is constantly emptying out the calcite. So it constantly needs more to be sent down. And as long as this guy has calcite in its inventory, that's fine. Now you can see we got a calcite logistics request, but it's from Volcanus. And this is very important because it means that otherwise, if it was from Nalvis, it would try and take the calcite back up into the space platform, which is not what we want. We want this to be an unloading station for this space platform anyway. Now this is the interesting thing about having the cargo hub down. This is basically the planet is a single station. For some platforms, it's an unload station. For other platforms, it's a load station. Now, if we go back to the calcite, we can see that we've got unload checked for Nalvis, which means that it'll throw calcite down. Now, it does also have some other stuff. So we got some iron, copper, and steel that have kind of just been built up and cached for use in our local ammo production. Now, if Nalvis was requesting iron, copper, or plate, or steel, this ship would absolutely start dropping them down. Absolutely. Anything in this ship's inventory will be shoved, will just be dropped down. And it's kind of an interesting way of doing it, but as you can see over in this ship, this one is also sending out calcite. So we've got two ships that kind of both have calcite and both send it out. And they kind of evenly distribute it. It's actually quite annoying because if you have a ship that has 1k left and a ship that has 10k left, it'll kind of evenly empty them out. Now, what I'd really like is for it to fully empty out one ship, so that ship could then go back, and then the next ship starts emptying out, which is how trains work, because obviously you can only have one train at a station at any time. But here, it doesn't quite do that. Although this one is full, 100% full. What happened here? I could have sworn I saw this guy emptying out before. Maybe I'm blind. Maybe I'm sort of screwing over my own argument. I have seen that sometimes, though, where it will unload both at the same time. But let's actually have a look, because we got 76 left, and it's just sending out chunks of 4. Now, when it sends stuff up to a ship, it always tries to use the rocket capacity. When it sends stuff down, it just says, what's the difference between what you're requesting and what you're needing, and what you're requesting and what you have. I'm going to send that much down. And it'll always just send down 4 at a time. So yeah, if I had less of these cargo bays to send out rockets, and I just had this, then it would be constrained on how many of these drop capsules it could send down, and then each drop capsule would store more of this calcite to sort of make up for it. But yeah, if we go over here, yeah, you can see this one's starting to drop down because this one is sent off. So that is interesting. It's sort of putting a hole in my argument, but having said that, I have 100% seen it in other circumstances. It's a very weird sort of thing. There's no deterministic, logical sort of way. Sometimes it'll drain one ship completely and then, you know, the other one will stay full, and sometimes it'll drain 2 or 3 of them sort of at the same time, which is very interesting. But yeah, you can see this one, we had a cargo of 0 and some other stuff. We'll get into that in a little bit later, but as you can see, it finished, and now it's going back over to Volcanus, and once it gets to Volcanus, it'll start loading the calcite until it gets up to 10,000. And that's pretty much it as far as unloading is concerned. So it is a little bit crazy. Hold on a sec. Let me get some more mining research productivity. It is a little bit like, it would be nice if there was a little bit more control, because yeah, if I put iron in here and there's 20 ships in orbit with iron, I have no way of determining which ones it's going to take iron from, which is okay, but at the same time, it's kind of not okay. So I'll give you a bit of an example, actually. I have got this ship called Angel Blue, which is over Aquilo right now. And what it does is it actually builds blue circuits from the, it's just a space platform. It looks like a ship, but it's not moving. It hasn't moved for ages. All it does is it takes all of the asteroids and it processes them, and with some end game recipes, you can actually make blue circuits in space. So it takes the iron and the copper, and it takes the coal and the carbon and the sulfur and blah, 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 blah. And it can actually make blue circuits in space. It's awesome. And basically what it does is it just puts them in the hub and is basically just providing blue circuits to Aquilo, because Aquilo, it can't really make its own blue circuits from natural resources. So it either has to import them in from a rocket, or it drops them down from an angel like this. And I was importing them in from a rocket, but the problem with importing them in from a rocket is you have to use up rocket parts, cargo parts, to send all those blue circuits up to the rocket, and that gets expensive. So just making them from scratch on a hub, if you could do it at any decent sort of speed, then it's beautiful. Now the problem with this is I have an AQ, Aquilo supply, and it previously was sending over blue belts. Now the problem is this supply ship was going to Aquilo and it was dropping all sorts of stuff. So this, my supply ship basically just takes whatever you think you want and it just drops it off the edge of a ship. And I've got a supply ship for every single planet, pretty much. And the problem with that was that even though I had that blue angel sitting above Aquilo, this supply ship was still dropping blue circuits. So there's no way to prioritize taking blue circuits from the Angel, where it's producing the blue circuits are free. Like, it's free blue circuits just being produced in orbit around Aquilo. But there's no way to prioritize receiving the blue circuits from the Blue Angel over receiving them from the supply ship, which is bad. So the way I got around this was, usually I've got a planet supply raw, which if we go over to FG supply, as you can see, it's a lot different. It's got blue circuits. So I had to create a custom group called Planet Supply Raw AQ, and I removed the blue circuits from it because that was the workaround that I had to make in order to stop the blue circuits being requested from the supply ship. So basically the supply ship just doesn't have blue circuits anymore. Which, I'm going to be honest, is a little bit like, it would be nice to have a bit more control. Maybe a priority system or something like that would be nice, but yeah. So, anyway, let's talk about these groups, because logistics groups are pretty awesome. So, if you watched my train tutorial, you know that train groups are definitely a thing. There are no train groups on this. There's no trains on here, but if we go to Nowvis, we can see we've got all these different groups, and Green Science Group is used by 2 trains, Military Science is used by 3 trains, so on. So we also have logistics groups, and a logistics group is basically a group of things that you are requesting, and you can use them between different logistic chests. You can also use them between different logistics ships, because of course ships are basically just requester chests, right? So we got this Planet Supply Solar group, and as you can see, Planet Supply Solar is used by 8 different places, and that corresponds to my 4 supply ships and my 4 planets. So basically each of my supply ships has this exact configuration. So if we go over to, where is it? My FG supply, it's got Planet Supply Solar as well. And if we go down to Fulgora, and we go down to the cargo hub, we can see that we've got another one of these awesome logistics requester things. And in the combinator, we've got Planet Supply Solar as well. So this is exactly the same logistics group. So what I can actually do is I can add something ridiculous. A fluorine vent. We're going to add 1 fluorine vent. You cannot actually get this from any planet, obviously. But if we go back to AQ Supply, we can see that is now trying to it has now got a fluorine vent in there. And I wonder how many of my ships actually got screwed up by that. Not many, it looks like. Because some of them have any request 0 and 10% of inactivity. So any request 0, obviously it's smart enough not to go and screw that up. But if we have a look, so Gleba Supply, it's waiting around Nowvis. All right, Fulgora Supply is waiting for any request to be 0. So if we add, let's add something interesting that we don't have so far. I've got so much stuff. Let's add wooden chests. As you can see, instantly any request 0, and it started heading off back to Nowvis because I've added this in the Planet Supply. And if we go down to Fulgora, we can see it's added here. There's going to be none in the logistics network, so it's automatically going to be requesting wooden chests. So that ship, all we did to change was that tiny little thing. This ship is going to fly over to Nowvis, and it's going to request wooden chests. And because of the way our rocket silos work, our rocket silos will send a wooden chest if I'm actually building one. So let's go over and build one. And then we can watch the entire chain of events happen. Do I have any wooden chests, actually? No. I got a bunch of wood. I'm out of buildings, so let's turn that back on and let's get some buildings going. We want a thing, and where are my requester chests? Come on. Useless robots. Don't ask me why I have thousands of legendary modules in my inventory. It was for a previous video. Let's actually, we don't need 50,000, we just need 50. And we don't need 20,000, we just need 200. Okay. So we're going to make some wooden chests here. And we're actually going to wait before we make them. So FG supply has arrived. And as you can see, it's sitting here until all requests have been satisfied. And currently, it's getting some more iron plate. It's getting some more green circuits. And it's not getting any wooden chests because there aren't any in the logistics network. So it's very unhappy, but apparently it was using a bunch of green circuits on Fulgora. So, yeah. And this is flashing a little bit. The reason this is flashing a little bit is because there's, I use iron for making ammo and for making rockets, but I also cache a bunch of ammo in the ship, in the hub, using this little system. But it fluctuates a little bit sometimes, so it's kind of annoying. But as you can see, we've got all our green circuits. Now we need wooden chests. So I'm going to make many. I'll make a little bit though. And if we go back up to our supply ship, we can see it's still red. Available on planet is slowly going up. Because we haven't changed the minimum threshold, it's going to wait until there's 50 available on the planet. And then it's going to send them all over to a rocket, and it's going to send them up to Planet Supply Solar. And if we have a look at Gleba, Gleba is also waiting on these guys. And if we have a look at Volcanus, Volcanus is also waiting on these guys. And I'm sure Aquilo... Oh, Aquilo actually got the first load. Okay. So, Fulgora Supply. Fulgora is not getting any of them. Who's getting the next load? Okay, we're going to switch over and going to watch the Volcanus ship. And... yeah, because Volcanus... I don't want to watch the Aquilo ship because the Aquilo ship takes ages to get to Aquilo. Aquilo is so far away, it's not even funny. But, yeah. So once all these requests are satisfied, it will basically head off on its way. Where are these wooden chests? I did like the space exploration mod's way of just making it infinite, like just instant. But here we go. So we got that. All requests have been satisfied. This circuit condition is just to make sure I got enough fuel in the ship, but it's not too much of a problem. So now we got our wooden chests. We got a send off, and on Volcanus as well, we have, where is our cargo bay over here? We got the same little bit of logic. It's requesting wooden chests. And so this guy is requesting wooden chests and stone for some reason. I don't know why we're requesting stone on Volcanus because, my god, do we have a lot of it. 2.4 and 4.8. Why the hell are we... I don't know. Maybe I've got... That is actually interesting. Why are we requesting stone? We're only supposed to have 1k. Oh, because I pushed this up to 10. I pushed this up to 10 times because I was building a megabase here and I wanted buttloads of resources. But we finished building the megabase, so we can actually put that down to 1. That's another cool thing you can do with these groups, is multiply them. So you don't change the contents of the group, but you do change the amount that you need. Oh, VC supply just showed up. So any second, we should see some wooden chests raining down from the sky. Here we go. It's gone yellow. There are 50 on the way. And there it is. So the beauty of that is that we automatically sent wooden chests to every single planet. And all we did was we just added it to our logistics group. So that is the power of logistics groups. You just reuse them wherever you want, and you'd make one change. All 4 ships head off to Nalvise, pick up that item, head back over to their planets, drop it off automatically. And yeah, so that's how these bloody that's why these supply ships are basically, the supply ships are all pretty much the same. We've got some weird things like AQ to ignore the blue circuits, but yes. And again, as mentioned, you can put a multiplier here. So if you want to build a Megabase and you suddenly decide you want 20,000 blue belts and 2,500 things on there, then you can just go down to Volcanus and you can say, you know what? I'm about to build a Megabase. I'm going to multiply this by 10 or by 20 or something like that. I want to build a huge solar plant on Volcanus. I'm going to multiply this by 20. And now you're requesting 4,000 solar panels. Now, that means this ship is going to have to make 20 trips to satisfy all of that, because we haven't multiplied this one. But if you wanted to speed it up, you could multiply this up to like 5 times or something like that. And then suddenly it's getting 1,000 solar panels and 1,000 accumulators. So it'll take a lot less trips, but yeah, it'll take a lot longer at Nalvise each time to fully fill these up. And it is smart enough to know we need 300 substations, because we're getting 250 from here and 50 from there. Now, we've covered the logistics groups, which are awesome, and it goes without saying, but you can also add logistics groups to your requester chest. So I could do Planet Supply Solar here, for example, and it's actually getting wooden chests because that's part of Planet Supply Solar, but you can also get rid of that. And this is really not much to do with space logistics, but this trash unrequested button is so awesome. Automatically trashes everything. You've also got it for your own logistics, so I can get rid of all those logistics speed and productivity modules that I don't want. Now, you do not have a trash unrequested for the ship, which is an option that I would like. I mean, let's be honest, I would actually like it. Because when you construct stuff, what happens is you usually end up with little bits and pieces of unused construction materials, and they just sit in your ship inventory forever. Like this, I can't really see any of them, but you can see most of the construction materials are also used for Planet Supply, so there's not too much overlap, but every now and then... Are there none in here? Here they are. So you can see we've got 1 miscellaneous thruster just sitting in there, 3 crushers, 8 asteroid collectors, 5 cargo bays. Just this miscellaneous crap that's just left over from when we originally built this ship all those hundreds of hours ago. So having a trash unrequested button would be awesome. Now, it is a little bit fiddly because then again you have to say, well, which planet do I want to trash it on? Do you trash everything on its home planet? Do you just say trash unrequested on Nalvise for everything? Or just set the planet or something like that? It is a little bit fiddly, but I'm sure they could figure out a way to do it. Now, let's get into the real meat of it. What should you be transporting? Because this is something that I really had to learn the hard way. And it all comes back to these rocket capacities. Now, let's go through, and I'm actually going to run away from the rockets because they're very noisy. Let's talk about a very simple example. Let's talk about yellow belts, because you're really not going to be transporting yellow belts, but yeah. Actually, steel chests, because steel chests are something you're actually going to be transporting. So steel chests have a rocket capacity of 50. and they take 8 steel plate each, and steel plate has a rocket capacity of 400. So that's actually a really bad example because, yeah, it's a one-to-one kind of thing, so you're not really saving anything. But, let's look at a different example, because that example kind of kicked me in the ass. Let's look at... No, that's a bad example as well, because that's got a pretty high capacity. Let's look at belts. Okay, so these have a rocket capacity of 100, and to make 2 transport belts, you need 3 iron. So, 3 iron plates. So, for this to be equivalent with iron plate, the iron plate would need to have a rocket capacity of 150. Now, it actually has a rocket capacity of 1,000, which is huge. And the copper plate also has 1,000. Steel has 400, but it's still more efficient to send steel up than iron plate because it's usually a 5-to-1. Plastic has 2,000. Sulfur has 1,000. Batteries have 400. So as you can see, this one has 2,000, 1,000, and 300 for the red circuits. As you can see, these raw components have pretty high rocket capacities. You could fit 10 stacks in a single rocket, 4 green circuits. Now, if we start to look at some of these buildings, for example, nuclear reactors have a stack size of 10, a rocket capacity of 1. And if we look at assemblers, have stack size of 50, rocket capacity of 25. Chemical plants, it's 10 and 10, so it's not too bad. Centrifuge, stack size of 50, rocket capacity of 1. So you can start to see a pattern. This one is 50 and 50, which is not too bad. This one's 50 and 50, which is not too bad. This one is 50 and 50, but 50 and 25. So there's kind of a pattern here, whereas the simpler and further, the simpler and further up the kind of production chain a resource is, the higher the rocket capacity is. So simple goods, very high rocket capacity. More complicated goods, very low rocket capacity, like the quantum processors. Well, and generally speaking, raw goods, this tab, the intermediate products, have a fairly decent rocket capacity. Like even the supercapacitors, which are end-game goods, still have a rocket capacity of 500. So, when it comes to putting things on rockets, you really need to consider sending raw goods around and then making things on the planet. Because that will give you the best efficient use of your rockets. Now, yeah, and pretty much all of these, some of them have a good efficiency. This one is rocket capacity 50, which considering how much you need bulk inserters, I mean, but electronic circuits, they're like 2,000. It's 50 versus, that's for 400. That's a ratio of 400. So, yeah. No, it's a ratio of 40. Excuse me, ratio of 40. So it's still kind of up in the air which one is easier, but yeah. It's definitely, I would say, early game, when your rockets are at a premium, where you're struggling to get the blue circuits and the LDS and the rocket fuel to send even a few rockets off the ground, do not make the mistake of sending assembly machines or sending even electric furnaces are not too bad, but yeah, send raw goods. Send raw goods over when you populate your new planet. Do not send buildings, send raw goods. Another reason you want to do that is when you populate a new planet, for example, Gleba, you need to start making agricultural towers. Okay? You need electronic circuits, you need steel plates. Where do you get the iron and the copper for those? It's a bit tricky to get iron and copper on Gleba. But if you ship over electronic circuits and steel plates and just drop them down from the sky, suddenly it's a lot easier. And if you decide you want to make nuclear, well, you don't want to send a nuclear reactor because that has a rocket capacity of 1. But you can send tons of steel plate and copper plate and advanced circuits and concrete. Now those will take probably about 4 rockets, 3 or 4 rockets on average to send over. But then you've got the flexibility. You can use the copper for a nuclear reactor, or you can use the copper for something else, or blah, 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 blah. And you don't need to worry about sending over 2 nuclear reactors in your supply ship and potentially not even bothering to build nuclear over there. You just send the raw goods and you can make whatever you want once you're over there. It's really, really good advice. Now, having said that, my supply ships, they have this Planet Supply Raw. I'm actually going to look at the Volcanus one. And that is all of the raw supplies that I'm sending over. So this is my Planet Supply Raw. This was the first logistics group that I set up. And this I used to basically seed all of my initial 3 planets with bases. I also had this, and then I had a Planet Supply Solar because I couldn't be bothered making solar panels and accumulators every single time, because to make them you need power when you first drop on a planet. And obviously you can't make anything if you don't have power. So this is what I would recommend for your first 2 groups. You send a buttload of raw resources and this little solar setup. Let's get rid of that. We don't need that anymore. And a bunch of solar, and then you're pretty much good to go. Now this Planet Supply, I just started doing that because I got lazy. And I started to make megabases, and I had rockets coming out the wazoo, and I had 200% rocket productivity. So I just said, you know what? Because I got sick of setting up assemblers for every single one of these goods on every single planet. So I just said, screw it. I got a megabase back on Nowvis. I'm just going to send everything. If you don't have a megabase on Nowvis, you probably will find yourself in a bit of pain trying to do all this. But this is not too bad. It takes a lot less rockets to fill up all of these goods, even though there's like thousands of them, than it takes to fill up all these goods. And then, of course, you have things like the EM plants and the cryogenic plants, and which you make on the planet. So if you want to move them to another planet, you really got no choice. You can't move the raw resources around because you can only make these on one planet. But that's pretty much it for how logistics works. Logistics groups are your friends, 100%. And ships are basically both passive providers and active providers. And one last thing I should probably mention. We have talked about automatic requests from space platforms, which is the main way I do it on Nowvis. Now you can also do it slightly differently. For example, if we go over to Volcanus, you can see this is my science build right here. So trains come in full of the Volcanus science, they chuck it into chests, and then they chuck it directly into these rocket silos. So these rocket silos have automatic requests from space platforms turned off. They only ever have metallurgic science packs in them. Now, if a science ship comes along and says, hey, give me some Volcanus science packs, these rockets will still automatically launch to fulfill that request. The automatic requests basically just sets the requests in the local planetary logistics network so that bots can pull in the items. But you can do without that. If you just directly insert the items into the rocket, then it'll automatically send that rocket up. Still, if there's a ship, they're requesting it. And in fact, if we go over to Aquilo, I've got a very limited bot network. So as you can see, for all the different goods I'm creating, like this is where we used to create science. I moved my science down to a Megabase build here with all these different rockets. Then we got some quantum processors. We got some fusion reactors. We got some cryogenic plants. We got some foundation. That's a pain in the ass to make. And we got some railguns over here. We got some rare railguns over here. So you can see all of the rocket silos on this planet are direct insertion. They never, ever get loaded by the robots, because robots on Aquilo suck very, very hard. So that is the other way that you can send things up via rockets. And I usually like to have a few rockets that just have this turned off and don't have any inserters, because then I can use them for transport. Having said that, oh bloody earth! I'm just going to turn my groups off and leave trash unrequested on, and it's automatically going to empty my inventory. And we're going to go all the way up to the top of my base. And I'm going to show you that you can actually, it's easier to travel to a space platform just using this guy, because there will always be a rocket ready and available because it's not doing anything else. But you can go to one of these automatic requests, and you can even go to a rocket ship that has stuff in it. Not this one. Yeah. So I can travel to space platform even though it's got automatic requests. You can sort of, like if I was on Aquilo, I could use, for example, this ship. It's currently got barrels in it, but I could still travel to the space platform from this ship. But these ones are automatically requesting from space platforms. They don't like me as much. I think they're always in the middle of taking off. But this one, you see, it's not full. So this one we could use, to travel to space platform. As soon as it's full, it'll immediately start the takeoff procedure, and then this button will be disabled. Come on, get some accumulators in there. In a sec, it'll disable. That's just, I don't know why it's taking so long. Why are you not? Oh, there it goes. And you can see the takeoff procedure has started. So that's pretty much it for interplanetary logistics. Now, I said I was going to talk about this right side later on, and I will, but to be honest, there's not really much to talk about. If you know how trains work, then you know how this works. Just think of every single planet as a station, and you're good to go. Now, it does have some additional weight conditions, which are kind of important. And obviously there are differences with the way that the planet stations work, because first of all, there's no destination limit. There's no enabling or disabling a planet. You can't enable or disable a planet or anything like that. And so ships just go there. They just go there. And so you've got a few additional conditions. One is all requests satisfied. Note that all requests satisfied only applies to the requests that are set up for that planet. So for example, if we go back to VC supply, all requests satisfied is only for the ones it imports from NowVs. So if it's trying to import something from Fulgora, for example, right here, and it's over NowVs, it's not going to be blocked from leaving NowVs because it hasn't got enough holmium plate, because this is importing from blah. Now we could change this to be imported from NowVs, and then it would block on the all request satisfied. Now the other main one I use is any request zeroed. And this one does apply to pretty much any item. So it doesn't matter where it gets imported from. If any request is 0, then it'll suddenly leave. So basically that means if it uses up all of the electric engine units, it'll leave. And by default, I usually have my supply ships always go back to NowVs, and they have interrupts to go to other planets for the items that you can only get from those other planets. For example, Fulgora, Gleba, Aquilo. Obviously, this is a Volcanus supply ship, so it doesn't get supplies from Volcanus. It's kind of a pull method. It's not a push method, it's a pull method. So all of the, like we've got a NowV supply ship, and it just goes to NowVs and it sits there, and then it has interrupts to go to, say, Volcanus if its Volcanus supplies are empty. And so if we go over and have a look at some of these interrupts, they're basically pretty much the same They're slightly different. Pretty much the same as trains, though. So you've got a condition, and then the target is basically go to a station, in this case a planet, and wait. And I do request satisfied, boom, 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 boom. You could do all requests satisfied, and it would work just as well. But I've had a few situations in the past where things have gone a little bit funky, and sometimes, but so I just do this to kind of be like special, but yeah. You could do all requests satisfied, and you could say, okay, good to go. Yeah, so that's pretty much it. So it goes there, and then once the interrupt is finished, then it'll go back to the last station it was at, which is probably going to be Volcanus, or Nauvis or whatever, but doesn't really matter. And that is how this supply ship gets supplies from all other planets and brings them over to Volcanus automatically. But its main route is just between Volcanus and Nauvis, and it only ever goes to Fulgora if specifically one of these goods is equal to 0. So you can see we're 22. We're down to 12 recyclers because I used a few of them. It's supposed to have 20, we're down to 12. Only when it reaches 0 will it suddenly zip off and go to Fulgora. And this is to avoid the situation where, let's say you want a ship to keep Volcanus stocked. You don't want to say, oh, one of my requests is 0, go here, and then here, and then here, and then here, and then all the way back there, and fill up on each station on the way. Because that's a huge round trip. You only want to go to Aquilo if you're missing something that you need from Aquilo. And you only want to go to Kleber, vice versa. So that's how we do that with those interrupts. And it's honestly awesome. Now, I could kind of, here's the thing, right? It's going to sit at Volcanus. It's got to wait for any request to be 0. Now, if a request for example, the recyclers goes down to 0, the interrupt to go to Fulgora is going to trigger. It's going to go to Fulgora. It's got to fill it up. And then at that point, it's going to go to Nauvis, which is kind of not perfect. What I probably should do is I should have a Nauvis interrupt and get rid of the main Nauvis station here, but meh. I mean, taking a side trip past Nauvis every single time is not that big of a deal. It's really not. Okay, I'm pushing past these mining productivity researchers way too fast, but yeah. It's a good thing to research. This is my DSM-6. It's taken its sweet time to get produced. We'll get into spaceship generation later, but as you can see, the ship is huge and it's only half done. So the full one is this guy. Look at how big it is. And we're trying to make 7 of these for Prometheum science. Although having said that, I will be waiting until they fix the UPS on asteroid collectors before I start sending all 7 of those out to go and farm up some Prometheum. But that'll be in part of, I don't know when that'll happen. Technically the series is done, but I'll still keep building them in the background, and if that UPS fix lands or I'm still casting videos, then I'll send them out again and see if I can get 5k SPM on every single science at a decent level of UPS. But yeah, that's pretty much it. You now know how to get interplanetary logistics. We've seen some very cool ways of sending any sort of item from any planet to any other planet. And we can see here, this one's got 29k left. This one's got 40, this one's got 40, this one's got 14. So it has been draining these in weird ways. This one's half drained. This one is also partially drained. These 2 are full. So it's a little bit non-deterministic how they unload. And the real problem with this is that, let's say you're doing a 5k SPM base and you figure out, okay, a ship takes X amount of time to go back and forward between Aquilo and now Vise. So, and then you use that to say, okay, I'm going to have 2 ships traveling back and forward, and I'm going to have them carry this amount of resources, and then they'll be sort of looping around each other. They'll be kind of, one goes over, then it unloads, and at the same time this one loads, and then this one goes over and unloads, and then it goes over and it loads. And they're sort of passing each other on the street every time they go back and forward. Now the problem with that is, you can have one ship waiting at Nalvise with like 2,000 left in its inventory, and you've got another one that shows up with 40,000, and maybe you're not researching with that science, which is why it's not pulling down. And then you start researching with that science, and you would expect that 2,000 to empty out and then start making the trip back. And then what happens instead is the 40,000 starts emptying out, and they both empty out at the same time, and then they both start heading back. And suddenly, because they're both heading back, they get stalled up a bit on Aquilo, waiting to reload, because there's only so many rocket silos you created to actually load the ships, because you only expected one ship to be there at a time. So they stall, and then they head all the way back, and by the time they both get back to Nalvise, that 40,000 science is gone. You've used it all up, because the ships took you had to wait for the full round trip to get more science, whereas you were only expecting to wait for half the round trip to get more science. So you can see how this problem of unloading non-deterministically can screw you up when you are doing an SPM build with Interplanetary. So the way I solve that is just by making a buttload more ships. Well, no, that's not quite correct. I made a buttload more ships, but what I did was I basically increased the cache to a very large amount. So for Aquilo, it currently has a cache of 240,000. No, 24,000 science. Is it 24? 24,000 science. Yeah. It's got a cache of 24,000 science. No, it is 240,000. What am I doing? All right. It says 12, 20. Yeah, it is. It's 240,000 science. And for each of these guys, I have a cache of 80,000. Now, it is interesting because this is a passive provider chest. And this is saying what's in the logistics network, subtract that, blah, 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 blah. And so what actually happens is it takes whatever's in here, actually says, well, it's in the logistics network, subtract it, and then request whatever's left over. Which means if you actually want, and then it says, and then this says, okay, I got a request. I want 120,000 because I've already got 120,000 science in the system, and so I want 120,000 more. So it puts in a request of 120,000, but there's already 120,000 in this chest. So in effect, this beautiful little circuit is actually double dipping on the same science packs. It's actually counting them twice, which means if you want 120,000, you're using this sort of setup, you actually have to request 240,000. So this used to be a times 10, and I had to up it to a times 20 to actually get the amount that I needed. But as you can see, 120,000 of each, 40,000 of each of the normal ones. Promethium science we're running low on because I'm not farming it anymore. But yeah, those are the amount of caches that I've got. And Aquilo has a massive cache because it's so much further away. And it's got 4 ships because it's so much further away. And you can mess around with also putting more science on the ships. I'm not sure if I did that with Aquilo. It's still just 40,000, but yeah. Gleba, I also created more science ships, mainly because the science just rots. So yeah, I wanted 4 ships, even though it's not that far away. But then, yeah, Volcanus only needed 2 ships, and Fulgora, I only needed 2 ships. They just go back and forward and back and forward. And because there's such a huge cache on the planet, even if they both leave at the same time and load at the same time and then come back, the cache will hold up enough for the 5k SPM to continue rolling while they're away. Yes. So that's pretty much it for the logistics. I mean, we've kind of covered everything we need to cover with these guys. So that's it. So let's have a look at some other... Is there any other wait conditions? So we've already talked about these top two. Any request not satisfied just means if it's... Like if you're requesting 100 and it's less than 100. So this is an extremely... As soon as something is not full, you immediately go off and leave the station. Which I don't really see the use for too much. I don't really use it too much. Yeah. You also got damage taken. That's not really relevant for logistics. Request not satisfied and request satisfied are pretty much these top two, except they're for specific requests. So you can highlight them for specific things. And the rest of them are pretty much the same. And in terms of interrupts, you got pretty much the same thing here. You also got some passenger present and stuff like that, which we don't really care about. I never really use that, but you could say have like an automatic thing, so you jump in a ship and it automatically sends you over. But yeah, that's pretty much it. That is pretty much how my logistics network works. And as an overview for my setup, basically, I've got my supply ships, which just take a buttload of different things off to different planets. And if anything is not fully set up, if any request is 0 and 10 seconds of inactivity, I put that in there because you want it to sort of keep sending. As soon as you get to a planet, it'll drop off a whole bunch of stuff. And you want to wait until it's sort of finished dropping off stuff. If it's still dropping off stuff, you just want to there and drop off stuff until it's kind of finished. And then it'll head off. And then now this just says all requests satisfied. Same thing for all of these guys. In addition, I've got the science ships, which just take science and then go back. And then pretty much every other ship is a very specific ship, like the calcite one. It goes to Volcanus, picks up some calcite, goes back to Nalvis, drops it off. Bioflux, the same thing. We got some legendary items for quality purposes. We got some weird things as well. We got space science, which actually produces the science on the platform. It's situated over Nalvis, and basically it just stores it in there, and then it relies on the cargo bay down, the cargo hub down on the planet, requesting space science, and it just drops it off the edge in a little cargo pod and sends it on down. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Legendary Miners is not actually doing anything, so we can ignore that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the logistics. Just you've got a general supply ship, and then I've got individual ships for individual goods, which I only really started when I was first starting off and I didn't have many resources. I kind of overloaded the supply ships with different things. As soon as I started hitting the Megabase level, I just started building new ships anytime I wanted. And I even started building these dummy ships. So these ships aren't doing anything, but when you want a new good moved, it's nice to have a dummy ship just sitting around, built up, ready to go, because you want it built up, ready to go, so it starts building up asteroids and start building up ammo and stuff like that. But we'll talk more about that in the next episode. So thank you very much for watching. I'll see you guys later.